If everyone will find a seat, I'd like to call the meeting to order, though I do not need to say be quiet. Everyone is so well behaved tonight. I thought the meeting started 5 minutes ago. Tonight we begin our new procedure with a prayer, and I'd like to ask Reverend Mike Hesse to come up to the podium. And if y'all would please find a seat in the back rather quickly. Let's stand.
Let us pray. Well, God, Heavenly Father, we thank you and praise you for all the blessings you have showered upon this community over the years. You've told us that blessings come when we dwell in unity. I invite your Holy Spirit to move in our midst this evening. Give to each of your council members, Scott and Rodney, Parker, Tuffy, Jim, Kyron, Chatham, and Preble, hearts for the citizens of Destin. Give them a vision for where you are leading us. Lord, begin even now to heal any divisions and restore strained and broken relationships. Give each member a countenance that is slow to take offense and swift to forgive. May they have eyes to see one another the way you see them. May they have ears that are quick to hear and lips that are measured in their speech. In all things, grant them wisdom to make decisions through which you will bless this community, even as we honor you. We ask all this in the name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Mr. Marler, would you lead us in prayer?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I believe all of you have had a chance to look at the minutes. Do I have a motion for approval?
I'll make that motion, Mayor.
Second?
I'll second it, Mayor.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please vote yes. Acceptance of the meeting minutes are unanimous.
Mayor, as a formality, did you need to actually call the meeting to order? With the gavel
Sorry,
or
I did that
anything?
before the prayer.
Ah, okay.
Apparently not loud enough. We have the second reading of ordinance 1611-CN. Mr. Miller, would you read by title?
Yes, sir. Ordinance 16-11-CN by title is an ordinance of the City of Destin, Florida, relating to donation and conveyance of a perpetual easement to the Florida Department of Transportation, providing for authority, providing for findings of fact, providing the need for such conveyance, providing for the mailing of a certified copy of this ordinance, and providing for an effective date. The ordinance is before you for consideration on second reading.
Mr. Casella, explanation.
Yeah, this is the second reading of the perpetual easement. This is at the intersection of Highway 98 and Airport Road. This will assist FDOT in doing the six laning of the project from the county line to Airport Road. So we'd ask for your consideration of this item.
This is a public hearing. Would anyone in the audience like to speak to this ordinance or this ordinance? Seeing none, council, we'll open it to you. Mr. Braden?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll make the recommended motion to move the City Council approve ordinance 16-11-CN on second reading and authorize the mayor to execute the ordinance and donation letter.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please vote aye, or yes, excuse me. It's a unanimous yes. We only have one item under the consent agenda, so we don't need to pull that out. I believe we do need to vote on that, do we not? Oh, I'm sorry, let me back that up. This is a special event permit for Buck Smokehouse, and I believe we just need an explanation on that.
Yeah, this is a, pursuant to the direction at the last meeting, you authorized us to work with the applicant to do a special event on May the 20th. We're receipt of everything. What we do need is the appropriate alcohol license permit and then the applicable insurance provision. We understand that is forthcoming, so we'd ask for your authorization of this pursuant to us getting that documentation for the event on the 20th. If we don't get it, we'll bring that back to you on the 16th, but we anticipate having it, and this event being the afternoon of the 16th.
Discussion?
Mr. Mayor, we skipped the public opportunity before the consent agenda in case any of the public want to speak on that.
Yeah, thank you. Any member of the public wish to speak on this matter? I see none. Council? Mr. Braden?
Thank you, Mayor. So you said if the documents aren't back, this will come the next meeting?
Yeah, if we don't have the appropriate alcohol license and permit, then we'll bring that back to you on, and the insurance certificate, bring it back to you on May 16th. Mike, do you have that?
Push the button, please.
Mike Buckingham, 783 Bayou Drive. Sorry, guys, we applied for the permit today. The permit will be delivered supposedly online tomorrow. I tried to get to it Friday and I couldn't do it, but the permit for the beer only will be delivered tomorrow. And I also brought some posters in case some of y'all wanted to see what we were doing. May I pass one out, sir?
Yes. Discussion?
The rest of my question was, if we don't have all the documents, why didn't we just put it on the next meeting? Why is it coming up this meeting?
Well, it's being presented contingent on us getting the documents. If we don't, we would bring that back to you. They need to plan, they need to post these. So they're gonna have the event. If they are not able to get the alcohol license permit, they'll pull that, but they'll still have the event.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have, Mayor.
Other discussion? Motion to approve?
I'll make a motion that we approve it contingent on the insurance and whatever's needed to satisfy the city.
Second.
I do not have the motion in front of me, sorry.
Oh,
Sounded
Got it
good.
here.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? Ask you.
Could we have someone read the?
I'm sorry, I'm trying to
recommended
get to
motion
it
into the
here.
I move to approve the special event permit for the Buck Smokehouse First Annual Charity Fundraiser to include the sale and consumption of beer in a portion of the Marler Street parking lot, contingent upon meeting all applicable local, state, and federal requirements, and providing the appropriate state alcohol license permit and required insurance certificate to the city.
Yeah, what Chatham said. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Those wishing to approve, please vote yes.
Thank you.
It's unanimous, yes? Thank you. Okay. I skipped the public opportunity to speak on council proposition. Well, we did only have one proposition, so.
Anything on the rest of the agenda?
Do we need to speak on any other matters on the agenda, or do we need to open that for public discussion? Other than the one consent agenda?
Mayor, the remainder of your agenda is subject matter that can be spoken to from the public, so I'd suggest you go back and open the public opportunity to speak on council propositions.
Okay, 3 through 5. We'll reopen to the public to speak on items 4 and 5.
Well,
Oh, all items?
it's
Okay.
actually all items.
Items
Yes, sir.
4 through 13? Or 4 through, all items, okay. Any further discussion from the public on any item? I do have several cards. Starting with 7A, Tracy Storm. Again, please repeat your name and address when you get to the mic and push the button until the red light comes on.
My name is Tracy Strom. My address is 6 Lakeside Court in Fort Walton Beach. I'm here on behalf of the Emerald Coast Fitness Foundation. It is a organization that basically, I just want to give you a little bit of information, and they're interested in, if anybody has any interest in the old YMCA Destin pool, whether they initiate running it or assist somebody else who the Arts Foundation decides to give it to. I'm just here to let you know, I've got some information. For further contact. But I just have 3 short statements that the Emerald Coast Fitness Foundation, we just want to let you know that it's an available option, whether we spearhead it or whether we're just support. We believe the Destin community needs an aquatic center for the safety and health of its citizens. We as a foundation will take the lead in revitalizing the center or support anyone that the Maddie Kelly Arts Foundation chooses if it follows Maddie Kelly's wishes and our mission. We invite anyone to see what we have accomplished in Fort Walton Beach, which is what this brochure is. Although the facilities are different and the communities are different, we have a plan that will work in Destin and for Destin. So I just briefly wanted to let you know the support is out there, contact information, and we just really want to see that pool be open, used for the citizens of Destin and for the whole benefit of the public. Thank you.
Brad Kell, 7A also.
Okay. My name is Brad Kale. I live at 125 Tranquility Lane in Destin. I am the head coach of Coast Aquatics, which is a competitive swimming and learn to swim organization based here in Okaloosa County. We have groups in Niceville, we have groups in Fort Walton Beach, and have had at times groups here in Destin. Have been to this meeting a few times in regards to this facility. Obviously, it's been about 14, 15 months. I can speak very clearly to what Ms. Strom and the organization that she was talking about represents. What they did in the course of about 4 months was amazing. They raised a particularly large sum of money. They also have money that's already been pledged for the Destin facility, if someone saw fit to let us spearhead that. The renovations that were in Fort Walton Beach were significantly greater than any renovations that would have to be done here because the building itself at the Fort Walton Beach pool is nearly falling down around it. This facility is an outdoor facility. Although it looks like a terrible eyesore right now, most of it's just cosmetic. I spoke with the guy who took care of that pool for its final 13 months of existence today. He believes that it would take a minimal amount of money to get all that equipment up and running again. I think it'd be worth the investment. Obviously, I have a self-interest coach in competitive swimming that would open up a great opportunity for me, but it could also open up a great opportunity in Destin. It would be another place to have events that people would come to Destin. We already have meets in Fort Walton Beach. We have had meets in the past in Destin with as many as 400 swimmers from 5 or 6 different states. that would come, and they're not just coming here to swim, they're coming here to stay, they're coming here to eat, they're coming here to enjoy the beaches. We had talked about, when it was previously being run, setting up swim camps over the course of the holidays and stuff like that to invite teams down here to train and bring people in from out of town to train. I think there's a lot of things that could be done there. I think it could be a great financial, or a great thing for the Destin residents, and I don't think it has to be a financial burden, which is the way it's been presented in the past. I think what you see on the papers there from Fort Walton Beach, I know that being a part of the advisory board, that organization is not operating in the red and never has. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mary Ann Watkins?
Mr. Mayor, City Council members, thank you for your time this evening. Item 7B, Parker Destin has put the comp plan back on the agenda tonight, calling for a workshop. At the last meeting, in his comments, he threatened to either repeal or make massive sweeping changes to the newly adopted comp plan. We just spent 3 years trying to find a compromise that would work for all parties, we meaning the city. After an incredibly lengthy and tedious process, the former council, with incredible experience, the support of the LPA, and all the facts, succeeded. And not only that, they appear to have succeeded without repercussion. 4 of you are fairly novice council members. It seems like it's a little early, not to mention poor form, to attempt to second guess a previous council, especially without a land planner on the staff to assist you. Keep in mind, Ms. Ramswell was the only one who voted against the plan, and no one has come publicly to suggest that the plan needs to be changed. He says he can drive a truck through the holes in the plan, but it's just inexperience that he fails to grasp the importance of the Land Development Code. For any of you to sit up there and think that you know more about writing a comp plan than a national urban planning firm is ludicrous. The city paid $200,000 and had considerable public input. This company was able to strategically weigh the taking away of property rights and creating a balanced plan against the mindset of people who would say to you, absolutely no growth. To change that now would be to waste the taxpayers' money and negate the efforts of hundreds of people who attended the town hall meetings. The best thing about the Canaan Plan is that it was prepared by experts in the field of urban planning and not shaped by local politics. I encourage you to think long and hard before you get too carried away trying to become a land planner. It begs the question of what ulterior motives lie behind the sudden interest. I believe your best avenue would be to leave the comp plan alone. Thank you.
Thank you. Carrie Harbinger? I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
She wants to speak at the end.
Okay. Mr. Destin, Dewey Destin.
Mayor, I would make the same request. I was on 13B, and it would be much more constructive if I could hear what was going to be discussed rather than go on for hours and hours, if that's allowable.
I think that would be better. Mr. Chesser, would you like to do the same?
Thank you, yes.
Okay. Mr. Cas-
I had not intended to go on for hours and hours.
Okay. Those of us have an 8-hour day scheduled here tomorrow, appreciate it. Mr. Casella, the Employee Climate Survey.
Mayor?
Did I miss your card?
No, I'll get it to you after the fact. Thank you. So, is it true that we can't speak during an item that's, while it's being discussed, it's either now or at the very end?
No, we're going to allow at least 3 speakers to speak to 13A when it's being presented.
Okay, but not any of the others in between?
No.
Okay, so then I'll speak now. Lee Moore, and I'm representing Howard Group, of course. And just in pertaining to the item on the agenda under Mr. Destin about the comp plan and a potential workshop, just wanted to briefly say that we support looking further at the comp plan, and especially giving the new council members an opportunity to have a look at it and potentially work with existing council members and the public to make further changes if so fit, and it goes through a public process. Our understanding is that it does need to go through the full process. And just 2 quick comments on it. One is that we encourage, if you do schedule a workshop, to give some time. I would say at least a month for you and anyone else that wants to participate to get prepared, to go back into this process and initiate it with people having been able to get up to speed or reacquaint or consider new ideas in advance of the workshop so that it can be as productive as possible. We certainly want to move through this process quickly as we can. And I also would say that we also have a concern about who can assist you all from a staff standpoint at this point with one vacancy and soon another, with getting up to speed on that. The only suggestion we would ask you to consider is whether you might want to bring in a contractor, a contracted firm or a person to help fill in Ken Galander's position. You could probably get someone in quickly and have that as an interim if you didn't want to go with that as a permanent solution to that position, but bring someone in soon and have basically outsourcing that. And it might even be a good trial run if you consider doing it short term on an interim basis to help you get through this process. And if you think it might work long term, that might be something to consider long term as a way of filling that position. So that's our feedback for you. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe I've had all the cards. Did I miss anyone? Anyone else? Mr. Casella?
Thank you. This item deals with the employee climate survey results. Since, believe 2007, we've been conducting surveys every other year, sometimes 3 years separated, of our internal employees, senior leaders, along with full-time employees and part-time employees, to gauge their overall satisfaction with the city, and helps us from an alignment standpoint where we're aligned from a strategic goals and so forth. To do these, we outsource to the Auburn Technical Assistance Center. They've been doing this for the last 5 surveys we've done. We have Henry Burge and Jim Percy from Auburn here. They'll present the results and then be able to answer any questions you have relating to the survey. So, Henry?
Mayor, members of council, my name's Henry Burge. I'm director of the Auburn Technical Assistance Center. Greetings from Auburn University. I'm War Eagle. We're an organization that's been for the last 40 years working with organizations to help them improve. And what we're here today with Jim Percy, my colleague, we're going to give you a sense on employee engagement and satisfaction, how well we're doing, and are we getting any better in the city of Destin. Thank you.
Crank the mic up to the top here. Mr. Mayor, Council, it's a pleasure to be with you again. This is the 5th time that we've had the opportunity to be working with you all. And it's been our pleasure, really, to see the evolving excellence in the city of Destin. When we first started, your strategic plan was basically a project list. The organization was not in there at all. And you've evolved to having a vision laid out pretty clearly for your residents and visitors, businesses, other stakeholders. Want folks to take pride in the city. I'm sure you want your employees to take pride in the city. You've evolved a strategic plan that involves delivering value services. And of course, we all understand that
all services basically come from employees. There's very strong correlations that have been done over the years between customer satisfaction and employee satisfaction. And ultimately, you can't deliver high customer satisfaction with a workforce that's unhappy. So it's to your credit that you're asking employees what they think. It's relatively uncommon in organizations in general, and it's particularly uncommon in small cities. So you're already exhibiting excellence just by having asked. What we'd like to do today is give you a quick run through this. As you know, there's a more detailed report, much more than we have time for tonight. But we'd like to at least give you some understanding of what's behind the numbers, reflect some of the previous results and where things have changed, and give you some ideas as far as systematic ways to maybe make it move up the road so that you can do a better job for all your stakeholders, including your employees. For those of you that have not been through an employee survey before, you can read the comments and get excited, but you might reflect to try to be open to what, oops, did I do that? Yeah. Be open to their message. They're basically telling you what they believe. And any organization is made up of a lot of individual people. So we'll show you some averages and numbers. Comments certainly represent individual opinions. Feel free to ask questions anytime as we go along. The model that we're trying to showcase here comes off the Florida Sterling and the Baldrige model, which is plan, do, check, hack kind of cycle, and this is, I said, our fifth cycle. We're actually in step number 3 here, which is the check part. The planning and the doing occurred since the 2013 survey, and so this is your opportunity to get some data and see whether the things that Greg and Karen, Lindy, and the folks in the organization have done have really moved the needle. And I think you'll be pleased with what you see tonight. Looking at some of the numbers to start with, the response was a little lower this year. We've typically run around 90%. I think that's probably more of a structural thing. We handed out the sheets with the code numbers on them a couple of days before the survey opened, and typically we've done it the same day as the survey opened. And if other folks' house is the way my house is, when a piece of paper comes in, it gets lost in a pile sometimes. So I think we lost some survey just from not having immediate ability to go answer once they had the directions. But overall, that led to a little more uncertainty in the survey, but I think the results are still pretty representative of what's going on in the city. Starting with an overall satisfaction chart, what we've done on this chart is basically take each individual's responses to the 52 questions and average them together, figuring that kind of represents an overall cut of relatively how satisfied they are. The scale is 1 to 5, where 5 they strongly agree with the question that we posed, and 1 they strongly disagree. And so what you're seeing on the chart there in the green are buckets. So for example, the 5 bucket there would be 4 people that average between 4.75 and 5. The 4.5 bucket would be 11 people that average between 4.25 and 4.75. So the yellow behind them is last year's results. So even though we had a dozen or so fewer people, you can see we increased in the 4.5 and 5 buckets over our experience in 2013. We had the same number in the lowest, so we have a few folks that are generally dissatisfied, but there's been a kind of a shift to the right. I don't think the lower response rate really affected the distribution very much. You tend to hear strongest opinions first on surveys. People that are most dissatisfied or most excited that tend to have the energy to fill out surveys, and as time goes on, other folks kind of chime in. So I think this probably is pretty fair representation. The average overall for these was up quite a bit from 2013 and up to the level of 2011, which was the high water mark at that point. The survey questions, as I mentioned, went back to the Sterling Baldrige criteria, which The first 7 items there are the major items of the criteria that we ask questions about. And then the 8th item are questions that we've designed over the past 8 or 9 years to specifically address concerns that the city staff had. And we added a couple of questions this year to pick up on particular issues. It's a little hard to read this chart, but basically this is the trends for senior leaders who basically were more favorable this year on everything except the measurement and the workforce elements of the strategic criteria. They tend to have higher scores overall. The full-time staff, other than senior leaders, had in many cases equal to or even better than our highest scores, which we saw in 2011. So full-time folks were up quite a bit from where we were in 2013. Part-time folks actually were down this year, and we've seen our part-time folks go up and down kind of out of sync with everybody else, and I think it's because it's a fairly small sample. It's 10 folks, and they probably aren't the same 10 folks every time that we do it, so whatever you happen to have working in that group, you may get different opinions. That's been a pretty variable one. If we look at the survey items, the top items for this one, and they have been for the past several years, committed to my organization's success. I know who my most important customers are, regularly ask my customers what they need and want. My customers are satisfied with my work. I know how to measure my work. These are things that people feel like they have control over. If you look at those, they're all their own. Doesn't require a team, doesn't require managers. It's things that I can do. And they're, most surveys, they come out near the top, and these have been within a point or two for where they were in 2013 even. The ones at the bottom, the lowest one, the city pays an adequate salary, has been either the lowest or second lowest the whole time we've done this. Employee performance evaluation process is effective as a new item this year. So that's clearly an area that is something to take a look at. My organization removed things that get in the way of progress. The organization has the right people and skills. So plans for the future of my organization, asks for my ideas. Again, these have been towards the bottom the past several years, but they are quite a bit better than they were in the 2013 survey. So it's progress, but the whole world is moving up. Looking at kind of an overview of the items for senior leaders, 31 of the items improved. 4 of those were significant statistical improvements, and 19 declined. For staff, however, 90% of the items, 46 out of the 52 increased. 5 of those were significant, and part-time staff, because of the small number, there weren't any statistical differences, and most of them declined, as I mentioned. There's some significant differences. Oh, wait a minute. The things that were most significantly changed for full-time staff, I receive high-quality support from other departments. That moved up 18%, which it ended up at 70%, so it was 52% in 2013, went up to 70. That's 18 real points. That's a moving the needle a lot. And I know it has to reflect a lot of work between departments to build better teamwork. I'm recognized for my work went up. It's still relatively low in the scores, but it went up quite a bit. My supervisor and is excellent leadership, supervisory skills, and I get all the important info I need to do my work were up. So those are the ones that full-time folks felt like made the biggest difference. As far as the difference between leadership and staff, and again, these are real points. So I know how to tell if I'm making progress on my work as a 30% higher score for senior leaders. So continuing, even though we saw some improvement in communication with employees, there's continuing opportunity to pass along what senior leaders feel like they know so that employees feel like they know it as well. As it plans for the future, my organization asks for my ideas. I know how well my organization is doing financially. Organization asks what I think, consistent policy enforcement, and so forth. So those are the ones that are the biggest difference between senior leaders and full-time employees. Those are kind of the gaps of where maybe some work opportunities. We looked at the comments. There were overall about half the comments that we saw last time. Last time we got a ton of comments. It was probably twice as many as we'd ever seen before. This time, and a lot of those were around council, senior leader, city manager alignment type of issues. This time that's calmed down some, and operations and HR systems are the areas that have the greatest number of comments overall, with the big areas being kind of structural ones: understaffing, desire for more training and education, compensation issues. Those are kind of the big three individual areas, and of course those are all budget items. But they're all also opportunities to talk about the importance of employees relative to your other stakeholders and the way that you budget for those things. Just a sampling of comments. We don't ask for favorable comments in the survey. We just ask people to give us some additional information where they would like to. We always get some comments of folks that enjoy working here. Nice shout out to Lance and Lisa Firth. Some thoughts about how ethical the city manager's office and their senior leaders are. And by the way, those weren't from senior leaders. And I feel able to talk to my supervisor and upper leaders, which is in some places an issue, but obviously some people feel like that's a positive. As far as some con areas, one that kind of captures a lot of the structural stuff. Many of the best players can be overtasked. Many departments are understaffed when compared to other cities with similar services. Top employee rewards are usually more work, responsibilities, and more stress. The organization reaps the financial reward and doesn't incentivize employees for significant changes to their jobs. And an employee situation or discussion this afternoon, we talked some about the salary survey that's going on. And I think that's going to at least give you a fix on where you are relative to that. Other comments here about training, alignment of council and city manager, getting organizations, and it's unfair to pay full employees less than it realistically costs to live in Destin, sort of comments. Overall, some concern about governance, balancing employees, seeing themselves as stakeholders, and would like to see better balance from their point of view in that. Every year we take and we correlate the scores with full-time or with overall satisfaction. We correlate the scores for each item, and we develop an importance scale to try to figure out, well, okay, one item might be higher than another, but employees may not think it's as relevant to their overall satisfaction. So we develop a statistical importance scale, and we put that importance together with actually the way they rated the scores to come up with a priority index, which reflects those things where they scored relatively low and they think they're relatively important. There were a number of I don't get enough information type things in that list last time. They all fell off. This time, the employee performance evaluation process was the number one on this list, which was a new item, and consistently enforces policies, which is another new item, was number 6. So 2 new items. I think the city staff was right on in putting them in there. That way you've got to measure them next time we do the cycle and they do some things, we can tell that improved. The other 4 are really all about valuing employee input, whether it's for planning, innovation, asking my opinion. And so there's clearly some opportunity to continue working in there. I think to wrap it up, the staff and leadership and you all should be congratulated. I made a lot of progress from where we were in 2013, and not the least of which is in the question about the perceived, I have an excellent supervisor manager. I mean, that one jumped a long ways. From a Sterling category point of view, the city is highest in customer focus and lowest in strategic planning. Compared to the Baldrige comparison that we have, the strengths are in strategic planning and measurement and operations, The biggest opportunity for improvement relative to that benchmark is in workforce. So this workforce feels not quite as favorable about their world as the Baldrige comparison that we have, which represents above average organizations. Going forward, I think there's 3 areas that you might think about focusing on. Certainly the performance management aspect, from the evaluation, link evaluation to rewards and compensation and recognition. The governance aspect of balancing the stakeholder interests and communicating to employees in tangible ways that they're an important stakeholder in the city along with citizens, visitors, and businesses. And the communication and cultural aspect of it, of creating this environment where people not only don't feel repressed from bringing their ideas, but feel encouraged to bring the best new innovative ideas and thoughts that they have to making the city a better place. Going forward for you all, we know you've got a planning session tomorrow, and so consideration of the city priorities to address these things, it's very timely for that. Taking a look at the structural issues, and I know a number of you are new in the council and new in your positions, and Henry and I would like to really encourage you to participate, at least some of you, in the Sterling Conference at the end of this month. It's a great opportunity to benchmark with not only other cities, but all kinds of other excellent organizations and understand a little more about this model, which is really the underpinning of demonstrated excellent organizations. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have about that. I think the upshot of surveys at this point in all of them is you have a bunch of people that have given you some feedback, and they're hopeful to see change. They're hopeful to see that where they live and the city organization is going to get better as a result of their feedback. And not everything is going to get done. I think we all understand that. But trying to identify some important things and chew on them and make it better over the next couple of years, I think would mean a lot to them. So thanks for your time, and happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Council member, Mrs. Ramsell?
Thank you. Ray, are we going to have a copy of this for tomorrow's visioning session? Is that possible to get some of this?
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Casella, spring break report?
Yep, this is the, we just finished up the spring break 2016, and thought it'd be appropriate that the Sheriff's Department kind of give you a big picture overview of the success of the efforts to contain the behavior and curb the behavior. So there you are. Thought you were standing up, but you were put. So, Captain?
Mayor and Council, I appreciate the opportunity to come and give you an update on how spring break went 2016. I'm sure most of you have had feedback from the public. I know the feedback that I've received is that spring break went very well this year. Complaints were at a minimum. The visitor count was somewhere between 15 and 20% higher heads and beds this year. The good thing is the criminal activity was kept to a minimum. The biggest reason I think that happened was, in the biggest part, City of Destin and the County Commission, they realized, based on what was happening to the east of us, that our activity was going to increase by putting some money aside to aid in the emergency funding of extra deputies on the beach and on the roadways. It was a very proactive approach which led to a successful spring break. One thing that I'll point out is involving spring breakers this year, we had no reports of sexual battery, no assaults or batteries involving spring breakers. We heavily publicized everything ahead of time made sure that the sheriff sent letters to the colleges, the universities, making them aware that it was going to be zero tolerance and there was going to be physical arrest made. Something that I'm very proud of on the part of my guys out here in Destin and the ones that worked the spring break is there was not a single officer complaint related to the spring break enforcement activity. We did have some that didn't heed the warnings, and physical arrest is what resulted in. The zero tolerance approach, the word got out quickly. Typically, they'd come into town on either Saturday night or Sunday. By Monday, they'd figured out that they were going to have to be very careful in their activities. The areas of coverage was Zone 24, which is Okaloosa Island, Beach 25 and 27, which are the southern beach in the city of Destin, basically from the Marler Bridge to Airport Road, and then from Airport Road to the county line south of 98. The spring break numbers, there was a total of 227 arrests made in Zone 27, 49 arrests made in Zone 25, and 125 arrests in Zone 24 and 26. 26 is the zone that's north of Zone 27, north of 98. There was only one actual arrest made on spring breakers in that area. We break down our arrests by state to try to give us an idea how to predict next year. We take a look at the college spring break schedules, the high school schedules, and things like that, and get a good idea of what to expect. Believe it or not, Louisiana was beat out by Georgia this year. They were number one. Louisiana did come in second. Kentucky was third. Alabama was fourth. Mississippi was fifth. I don't know if that's going to have anything to do with the college football polls, but that's the way it shook down. Of the 320 alcohol arrests that were made, those were all physical arrests transported to the jail. There were 773 notice to appear issued to those under 18 years old. The youngest that was arrested this year was 14 years old, issued a notice to appear. It's about a 42% increase in arrests and NTAs over last year. Total cost of the overtime was about $79,139. So the 107 that was set aside, that we didn't use all of that. I reached out to Bay County and Walton County to try to get an idea from them what their activity was like, and kind of as we predicted, they moved it from their county toward the west. There was a 78% decrease in Bay County on physical arrest. Walton County, it was a 53% decrease. The people over in Orange Beach, Alabama, when I talked to the lieutenant over there that ran their operation, they were caught kind of flat-footed. They'd not done a whole lot of pre-planning. They didn't set aside any additional funds. They had to go out and request emergency funding. They had a 333% increase in arrests in Orange Beach, Alabama. And I'm going to play a quick PSA that was put together by our PIO that was put out prior to spring break.
The Okaloosa County Sheriff's Office worked to get the word to spring breakers arriving in Destin: possess alcohol underage, get arrested. Sheriff Larry Ashley even sent letters to condos and hotels to distribute to spring break students, warning them it won't be tolerated. Out-of-control crowds on nearby beaches last year sparked this year's push to set the tone early. Cracking down on underage drinking reduces the potential for public safety dangers ranging from drunk driving and fights to balcony climbing and sexual assaults.
I think the message has been clear for the last couple of years, and especially after Panama City Beach last year, that this type of behavior is not a rite of passage. It's a violation of the law, and we're just not going to. The people that live here are just not going to put up with that kind of behavior and destroying property and disrupting everybody else's opportunity to vacation in peace.
To that end, Sheriff Ashley was successful in getting additional funding from the City of Destin and the Board of Okaloosa County Commissioners to add extra patrol officers to the beaches this spring break and to add a new plan of action for violators 18 and older.
The notice to appear that we used to give would just basically give the offender a court date to come in and show cause for why they were drinking underage. Most of them would pay a fine versus coming back and going to court. But this year, those that are above, between 20 and 21 and underage drinking, they're actually being physically arrested and they have to bond out. And the courts have set a $1,000 bond, which ends up being about $100 through a bail bondsman or surety. We're not going around, poking our nose in people's, solo cups, trying to figure out what they're drinking or not drinking. It's usually what brings individuals to our attention is when they're acting out and disrupting the peace of others.
The local spring break focus for tourism businesses has always been on families, and the sheriff says spring break students are welcome as well, as long as they know they have to obey the law or face the consequences.
Our goal is just follow the law and come and enjoy your time here and make memories and come back.
As of April 6th, 363 spring breakers have been arrested for underage possession of alcohol and other violations in Okaloosa County. The majority were in the Destin and Crystal Beach areas, with the rest on Okaloosa Island.
No, we don't need Lake Havasu. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say thanks a lot for, thank you for you and all the officers that put in overtime for spring break and keeping us all safe and keeping the riffraff out of here. Thank you.
Mrs. Ransell?
Thanks. Thank you. I second that. I think, what you guys did and accomplished this year was great. Did you feel like the funds that were set aside to be used this year were enough? And is that an amount that might be good to carry on for subsequent years, or what are your thoughts on that?
I believe we got very lucky this year. Weather helped us out quite a bit. We were able to, kind of the game plan was if it died off and the weather moved them inside, and we weren't getting calls for service, to send people home. What I've proposed for next year, put a package together for the TDC to request TDC funding. There have been some changes. There was a bill that was passed this year that allows now for law enforcement to be funded through that avenue. So that's what we're hoping for next year.
Fantastic. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Mr. Foreman?
Button. Captain, I really want to thank you and your deputies for what you've done this year. I think all of us, are sympathetic with young people to a degree, but when they misbehave and they come in and they endanger themselves and others, then that crosses a line that you can't afford to let go. And I think the pre-planning that went into it this year, I'll even go back to where we had a conference here on Crab Island. We were concerned about the same thing going on out on Crab Island. And all the agencies came in, and we did discuss various actions to take care of that situation for whatever reason. But I'm the TDC representative here for Destin, and they do the budget on the 6th of May, and I'm going to be there.
Thank you.
No further questions? On my end of the island, it was really quiet. We really appreciate it. Y'all did a great job this year.
Thank you all for the support.
Project reports and comments from council and mayor. We'll start with Mr. Morgan.
Thank you, Mayor. Let's see. I have some stuff pertaining to your letter on Heritage Park, but we'll get to that. under your comments. I attended the Arbor Day ceremony this week, and I'd like to thank Mike, Lance, Greg, and Lisa, and everyone who made Main Street Park a whole lot nicer. It's a tremendous improvement of what it was. I think we made the neighbor happy as well, that Tuffy brought up a couple months ago. And that's a really tremendous asset to the city. And also, I've been getting a lot of positive feedback regarding the purchase of the old cement plant from citizens. And we've had a lot of negatives in here, and that's certainly a positive, turning that old cement plant into another benefit for the city. So I'd like to thank Greg and all the city staff that's worked on that. I'm looking forward to talking about that in June. And that's all I got.
Mr. Destin.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. The first item I have is 7A. That's the discussion on the former Destin YMCA facility. Just as a sort of like a brief personal history on me, I swam from probably about age 11. Then I swam all the way through college, and swimming's always been an important part of my life. I understand the importance of it from a public benefit standpoint. Children have to have a place to learn how to swim. And so I've always used the Destin YMCA. It's a place that's near and dear to my heart. And it's also broken my heart that it closed and it's languishing. And I just wanted to take an opportunity, and now that I'm new and on the council, to see if, just from taking the temperature of the public feeling on seeing if we can come up with a solution to get the doors back open. And if the city can be involved in that process to facilitate it, even better. I have no illusions. Pools are expensive. But if there is third-party organizations out there that are interested in trying to fill the void from an operation standpoint, I think we should at least try to get a conversation going to see if between us, perhaps the Fitness Foundation and the Mattie Kelly Arts Foundation, if we can get the pool reopened. I think it's an important thing, and so I'll just throw it out to the council to discuss, and just go from there.
Ms. Ramsdell's first.
Thank you, Mayor. Parker, I support this 100%. I actually was the YMCA appointee from the council when this unfolded. I have been in touch with Emerald Coast Fitness Foundation and obviously the swimming groups as well. I have the minutes from when they came in and spoke on October 20th of 2014. They actually came in and discussed a few items and gave some estimates as to what it might cost to run it, and also some business plans in terms of what sort of revenue they anticipated generating, and a business plan, which is obviously very important. And I think probably most of all is what they've done in Fort Walton Beach with the pool there. I think that has been just handled tremendously well. The community rallied around it. They've got some amazing donors, and it's turned into just a highlight of the area. So I would fully support trying to get this up off the ground. Whatever we need to do, I'm behind it, because I know the swimming community's behind it. I know the beach rescue team is behind it. The triathletes, I mean, there's a whole slew of folks that are just waiting to try to get this pool open, and honestly have done nothing for a year because they don't have a place, or they don't want to get all the way out to Fort Walton Beach. So that's my 2 cents. Thanks.
Mr. Foreman.
Thank you, Mayor. I think I can tie both of your comments together in one. From the very early days of the city, when the first comp plan was put together, the swimming pool was in it as being one of the things that the city would support. When the city agreed to, I forget whether it was a loan or whatever it was, and this building was part of that purchase, and the question came up, should we have our own city swimming pool? And it was determined that it was not in the best interest of the people of the city for the city to run it, but that we would support the YMCA in doing it. And we provided funding to them to do that. So I think we've got a vested interest in making sure it gets done.
Excuse me, Ms. Morgan?
Thank you. Yeah, I echo Parker and Preble's sentiments. I think back in the 1980s, Harbor Docks gave $90,000 to set aside for a fund for the YMCA, and so we're obviously disappointed that it closed. And speaking from someone who's about to start a family, you know, we live on an island for all intents and purposes, so it would be nice if my kids had a place to learn how to swim other than Choctachi Bay, which is where I learned how to swim, and that's okay too. But, you know, I think it's necessary, and when you talk about ways in making Destin a nicer place to live, municipal swimming pool certainly achieves that.
Mr. Braden?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, you definitely have my support on it as well. I have firsthand experience with the Emerald Coast Fitness. My daughter goes to that facility and practices volleyball. They've done an amazing job with that facility. So I just want to give you my 2 cents, and I'm behind 100%.
Anyone else?
I just wanted to add, I know one of the concerns was the condition of the facility, and are the pumps operable, and sort of what are we looking at? I mean, is it worthwhile? And I've heard people say $100,000 and 50 grand. And I actually reached out, and I don't see Coach Brad right now. He must have stepped out. But he had gotten an estimate from the man who used to take care and maintain the facility. And even last year, when they went over and had everything turned on to just check and see if it was working, the pumps were working just fine. Their estimate to reopen is $25,000. And of course, this group is willing to put into that as well. So anyway, that's just another bit of information I wanted to share.
Great. Thank you. I've been looking into this, and you saw the operating figures that I got from the Panama City Beach Pool, which I assume is very similar to this one, other than they have a lot more facilities around their pool, soccer fields and baseball fields, and it's a much more developed park area than what we have here. But I think what we really need is somebody to take a leadership role to get this thing on track, and I'm not sure the city's the one to do it, but we certainly, sounds like we would be supportive of it. Well, you still have the floor.
Okay, so maybe it's best to just put this into a motion, but I'd like to move to instruct the staff to reach out to the Fitness Foundation. And I spoke with counsel for the Maddie Kelly Arts Foundation this morning, and they want a pool open. So, and a lot of times in the past, over the last year, they were not getting much response out of the foundation, mostly because the foundation was in litigation with the bank, Beach Bank, and the question was, who gets the land after the foreclosure? Well, that's all been settled, and the foundation is in charge of the land. They want a pool, and so I think this is a really good time to try to get all of us together in the same room, put our heads together and see what we can do from the city standpoint to jumpstart this process, to see if we can get the Fitness Foundation in there to be able to successfully run the facility. And so I would move that Mr. Casella or whomever on the staff that he instructs reach out to the Fitness Foundation. I'm sure Ms. Strom, I guess we have the information on here, but also coordinate with the representatives of the Maddie Kelly Arts Foundation to see what we can do to get this pool reopened. And I'll just throw that motion out there. If it wants to get seconded, then we'll throw it to a vote. I know it's unagended, but.
I will gladly second that.
We have a motion, we have a second. Discussion from the audience? Seeing none, further discussion from the council? Call for the motion. Unanimous, yes. Mr. Destin?
Yes, and then I have 7B. I had originally placed a motion to reconsider the comp plan, and, you know, I stand by my criticisms of the comp plan. I also stand by my previous statement that there is a skeleton of a good plan there, and I think it would be, rather than repealing or reconsidering the entire plan, I think that might end up being throwing the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. So if we can all get together in a workshop format, and I agree with the Howard Group's sentiments that it's best that we give ourselves a little bit of time to bring ourselves up to speed. And but I would move that we go ahead and ask the mayor to set a workshop, probably, you know, somewhere in the first week of June, to where we can all get together and we can discuss some of the specific sections that we have some heartburn over, and see what we can come together and fix, honestly. But starting from ground zero again, that doesn't make any sense. So I'll move to have the mayor set a workshop and preferably in the first week of June.
I'll check with.
I'll second that, Mayor.
Okay. Do we need a motion for me to call a workshop?
No, sir, you have authority to do that.
I can do that unless further discussion by council wants to. We got a motion. Okay. Mr. Foreman.
Cut the microphone on. What concerns me a little bit in this, I follow your line of thinking, and I know that there's some improvements to be made in the process. I'm a little concerned that the key people that we've got on board, with the city manager retiring and with the community development director probably not being hired until a new city manager comes on board, you've got the key people who take the staff action to implement what you want to do. And so what I favor is that we proceed, and I see we're going to talk about that later in the agenda, is that we find out a little bit more about the time frame on that, and then I would like to see those people, perhaps even in the process of recruitment of a city manager, you're going to find the person who is strong in the area that you're concerned about. And so that's my thinking. I will still vote for your motion, but
Further discussion? Call for the vote. Votes unanimous, yes.
Mayor, I think it probably would be best to go ahead and pick a date. My concern with extending this out for too long is that, you know, I got our manager's weekly report this week, and our newest, you know, we have an application for approval of a new construction phasing plan of the previously approved Phase 2 of the Harbor Walk Village. You know, my concern is, what comp plan is that going to travel under? And if we kick the can for too long, we're going to end up with a lot of development orders that are going to try to apply some of the worst sections, I think, that we have in there. And so I don't really want to waste a whole lot of time. I think Ms. Moore's idea of bringing in a consultant or a third party to act in the community affairs position, probably that Ken was in before, to assist us in this process would be wise. But I don't think we want to waste too much time as we search for our major staff positions to be filled. So, you know, if anybody has any objection to a Thursday night, I know that June the 2nd, you know, if that works for somebody, I'd toss June the 2nd at 6 o'clock out there. That way we get the most, public to be able to also participate.
I will be out of town on that day. Matter of fact, I'll be in Auburn.
I had thrown out June 2nd. That is about a month that's exactly a month, but if we get close to that, that's good too.
Following week?
Would June the 9th work, or does anybody have any obligations?
I understood your motion to have it the first week of June was included in the motion. I think we probably ought to hold to that unless we're going to revote.
Oh, well, I can always resubmit a different motion to amend that one.
Yeah.
That's fine. So if we can commit to a date, then I'll just include that in the next motion so we don't have to redo this too many times. Does June 9th work for everybody around 6 o'clock? Okay.
Let me help you out. The mayor has the right to call a workshop.
There you go, go for it.
It will be June 9th, 6 p.m. Mr. Casella, if you'll get that on all of our calendars. No further discussion on that, Mr. Marlar? Question?
How, Mr. Casella, how many development orders would you say come in a week?
I'm looking probably 3 to 5 development orders. And they, when we say development orders, they can be relatively small to fairly large projects, but mostly in this market has been, 3 to 5, but there are smaller projects because of the economy. All the other projects have pretty well are operating under the 2010 comprehensive plan.
So when you say small projects, how would you classify that? Like a single-family residential, or would?
But basically a renovation of a building, more renovations and, from start to finish on vacant dirt.
Okay. What I was just sort of thinking in my head was, I know the word moratorium scares everybody, and I wasn't going that direction, but if there's some way to set some sort of threshold of, like, if a project of this size comes in, maybe council reviews it until we have a procedure in place. That way we're not putting any sort of moratorium out there. I don't know. It was just something I was thinking of to avoid an influx or panic or anything of that nature. But
yeah, I think the danger in that is that you could be discriminating, and Scott, you may want to weigh in, is I don't think we can just pick small projects versus large projects.
No, and two, there's a couple of different methods you can use. You can either use an announcement of a zoning in progress to delay the processing of applications, or you can use a moratorium. In the instance of the zoning in progress, you need to have a very firm idea of where you're going with the ordinance making process, and actually have to have something that's in writing, kind of being considered in order to delay those applications for a short period of time while you have a chance to adopt that ordinance. The moratorium, again, you would also, those are best if they are as narrow as you can possibly draw them. So it would take at least a workshop to identify the area of concern initially, and then narrowly define that area of concern, and then you might be able to come back and do some ordinance drafting with regard to moratoria. Again, that would have to be temporary, and it would have to be well justified in order to implement that.
What you don't know is whether or not there's somebody out there that has just put a piece of property under contract, in the process of arranging financing, actually got engineers engaged and land planners engaged, and all of a sudden a zoning in progress or a moratorium stops that all. So, and that's the cause of action that you try to avoid. I don't think it's hard to guarantee that nothing's coming in, but I don't see anything really big coming in over the next 30 to 45 days. Doesn't mean it couldn't happen, but there has been property owners out there that have been waiting for the new comp plan that went into effect 2 weeks ago. For example, in the Crystal Beach area or in the Calhoun mixed use area, which is not the Harbor District, not the town center where you would get some of the bigger buildings, that have been patiently waiting and ready to submit, and could get impacted by a zoning in progress or a moratorium. So
Thanks, that's all I had. I just was wondering whether we should act proactively or not, but that's good. Thanks.
I think that was on all of our minds. Mr. Marler?
Thank you, Mayor. I have two items that I had on the agenda and then a couple of other small things. One, a lot of citizens came up to me after the election and wondered, after our meeting last 2 weeks ago, about the vote of confidence. And most of the questions were turned toward how could a couple of members of council with only 3 meetings under their belt do a vote of confidence without giving the man a chance. I told them, I said they personally have to talk to those people because I was on the non-prevailing side, which means I cannot really discuss what happened without causing a little breach of Robert's rules and a few other things. So I'm not going to go that direction. But we had several members of the audience at that time speak up in favor of Mr. Casella, and I've talked to several people who say that we're making a mistake by allowing him to retire without trying to get some of the issues that we have here resolved. In accordance with those issues, Ms. Ramswell brought up some issues that she said were part of the city manager's job to make sure things were done, and I have to agree that that is part of his jobs. Now, also, I have to agree that most of the things, and Mr. Foreman said it eloquently, that is that all you've got? The things that she brought up were kind of small in some significance, but were also a little bit on the not really our problem side, and I'll get to that in a moment. She brought up the cell towers that were erected in Crystal Beach. There was a loophole within the system that we have here that apparently we were not aware of at the time, and that's how the towers got put in. But we did take care of getting them out of the way and not putting them there by hooking them up with the DWU and allowing them to work with them on their properties to put the towers. The reasons that apparently the towers were not moved in what we considered a timely manner would possibly be, and I've checked on this, is that the company that put them in wanted to actually save some money in the issue by not having to move them twice. In other words, wait until they had decided where they were going to go, move them at that time, and that way it would save them and their the person that they were being contracted to, which was Verizon. And if you own a Verizon phone, I don't know whether or not the towers have helped or not yet. I haven't been able to find that out. But that was just one of the things that was brought up. Also, waste management. This is a kind of funny one with waste management because Mr. Casella left us in 2010 when I was not on council and dropped a waste management situation into our next city manager's lap, Ms. Eustick. She came through, and at the end, we were able to do a contract. But the whole thing with waste management is all the uncollected bills, all the uncollected money, they're not the city's money, it's waste management's money. And we tried over the years to Waste Management do their own money gathering situation, if you want to call it that. But we, as a council, many years ago, put a mandatory garbage ordinance in. So it's kind of weird that we tell people that they don't get they have to pay, but if they don't pay, we send them up. Code enforcement at that time, I believe we only had 3 code enforcement agents at that time, maybe a part-time one. And if all their time was put on garbage, they couldn't get to the other things, which some of those other things happen to be some of the things Mr. Dixon was worried about, which was all the different cars on bricks and all the other stuff that we had in the yards that the public saw that were a hazard just as well as garbage. So again, part of that is that Mr. Casella done what he could do, at the time, and you can talk till your face is blue on certain subjects. The Gulf Power and the state were the 2 fun ones to me. Gulf Power, we had issues with them for years. I mean, they are a big company. We don't have much of a choice in our power situation here. And they kind of say that we'll get to it when we get to it. It took us 2 years to get them to get everything moved around for us to finish Airport Road, just to let you know that much. So getting the audit and getting to find out what our lighting was that we were paying for, it took a lot of time. Yet, yes, you're right, Mr. Casella was responsible for that. As our city manager, he's responsible for everything, whether it gets done in a timely manner or not. he gets the glory, and he also gets jumped on if it's not done. As far as the dip sign on Highway 98, that's been going on for probably 20-something years, because every time they rebuild Highway 98, that area sinks. It has sunk every time they have done, I don't know what it is, maybe the sand or what it is. It sinks. The dip sign, again, is you can talk to the state every single day for years, and if they don't want to put it out there, they're not. And considering the fact that they are going to resurface from Marlar Bridge to Airport Road, hopefully they might fix it this time, and we won't have to have a dip, because it's not just the dips there, it's also those manholes are a pain in the butt when you drive over that side. Everybody shifts over to the left during that time. And again, as I say, these are concerns that she brought up, and I'm not saying that he was not responsible for them, but there were always mitigating circumstances to why certain things didn't get done. Missing and incorrect street signage. Former council member Trammell, myself, the Public Works Department have been working on that for many, many years. I don't know how many of you ever noticed that Matthew Boulevard sign that there's one Matthew Boulevard sign that's misspelled. It's been misspelled that way ever since they stuck it up, and the state told us one time we're not going to change it for one letter. So that hadn't done. And it just happened that the citizen that was mentioned and the other citizen that was mentioned in it were both running for a public office, so it was a nice thing to do, you know, to get a little couple of extra votes out of it, and nothing against that, but it was a team effort by a lot more people than what Ms. Ramswell stated at that time that it was. One of the things that was brought up was that inadequate parking at Emerald Grand, and that will go along with what Mr. Destin here was talking about. Emerald Grand was permitted before we even had a tiering system. The tiering system is the reason that, or Emerald Grand was the reason we even came up with a tiering system, because people didn't want another tall building in town. I was not working for that company at the time. I tried to get it to 10 stories. I also tried to keep the old building that was at last Fat Tuesdays, but originally was a grocery store and a hotel that was built back in the late 40s to stay. Unfortunately, I didn't win that race, because it would have been nice to keep that building as a landmark. The adequate parking at the time of that development and the comp plan, we spent over 50 hours with the LPA and then same hearings here or in the former council chambers, working it back and forth. That developer did everything they could to get what they wanted. The city tried to do what we could to get what we wanted out of the deal. The main thing is that was the reason the tiering system was put in place. The tiering system apparently didn't work either, so now we're going with what we have with the comp plan, which I'm hoping our new comp plan, adequate stories, is a much better idea than with the way we're trying to do it, with nobody going over 10 stories or 100 feet, however they want to call it. She also mentioned something about the employee signing a legal affidavit. That employee is no longer with us for the reasons that he did something that was wrong in the eyes of our city manager at that time. He made a judgment call. The judgment call was wrong. He paid the price. I don't think we should even discuss it anymore. He resigned from the city, and I don't believe that we should take the man's, run the man's name through the mud any longer. It's just not right. What happened, and no offense to all our attorneys in the room, attorneys are very crafty. And the attorney in question, I went to high school with, and I know he's very crafty. So we'll get that out of the way. Finally, on this issue, part of the problem that we've had is apparently, there are certain council members who cannot get along with Mr. Casella for whatever reason, or have other agendas. When we're elected by the public, our agenda is very simple. We serve the public. Now, some of that public came forward at the last meeting, and I know some of that public's here tonight. I don't know if they're going to speak against on that or not, on whether or not we made the right decision to allow Mr. Casella to leave us. You're letting a good man leave when we really need him at the head of our ship right now, and I'm not happy with it, but I'll abide by what was made at the last meeting. But in December of this past year, Mr. Dixon brought up the issue of mediation between Ms. Ramswell and Mr. Casella, and he asked if that was possible, and both Ms. Ramswell and Mr. Casella stated they would be willing to participate. At that time, former Mayor Ponder, who was resigning in January, agreed to mediate. I have since learned that one of the reasons that did not happen was he felt he was too close to the issue after he left office, and I understood that. I also understand several members of clergy came forward to try to help mediate, and Ms. Ramswell declined at that time. For whatever reason she wanted to, that's up to her. So that's some of the problems we've had with the city manager from the standpoint of a couple of council members. No one's going to ever be happy with everything that we do up here. As we saw in that survey a little while ago, the employees eloquently said that they would, everything's working fine if the council leaves the city manager and the staff alone to do their job. So a lot of times our problem up here is, and it's happened before, we like to micromanage. And unfortunately, micromanagement doesn't work. It's one of the reasons that the city formed the charter we did in 1984 when we became a city. They wanted a council city manager form of government because they did not want any one person to have absolute power. And I say this because I brought this up at the last meeting that yes, in a sense, we are a popularity contest on who gets voted into office sometimes. And I didn't mean that meanly as much as I meant people like us for whatever reasons we're up here. So, and nothing against the mayor. The mayor is a very educated man, and most of the mayors we've had have been very educated. But let's just take a quick scenario of Joe the plumber. Joe the plumber is a popular guy, and he gets elected mayor. He knows nothing about running a city, but we've changed from a city manager council form of government to now a mayor council form of government, and that mayor is responsible for everything. So Joe the plumber, and I do know a guy named Joe who is a plumber. He'll kill me later. But he gets elected. He knows nothing about running a city. He knows how to plumb a house. He knows how to run his business, but he knows nothing about running a city. So how does that person without that education do exactly that? That is one of the reasons that we have a mayor, we have the council city manager form of government. And respect to the mayor, when the first guy, Mr. Destin, the senior, was on the first seated councils, one of the things that was the reason is the mayor didn't even get to sit up here on the dais. The mayor sat in a chair out there in the audience, and when the council chairman called upon him, he came up, gave his report of how many babies he kissed, ribbons he cut, and whatever else he was doing for the city. A few years later down the road, they decided to allow the mayor to run the meetings, which is a good thing, which gave it a better choice, and we needed a tiebreaker. That tiebreaker was in effect if we had a sick member of council, or if a member of the council was, could not vote for whatever reason. And it's a good system, and it works. All of our mayors have done a great job of running our meetings. Mayor Fisher is still doing in the learning process, and he'll get it right in a few weeks, and I think everything's going to be great. But we still have a tendency to micromanage up here. That's why we hire a very strong city manager, and we've had difficulties in the past with city managers. There have been some, and I was privileged, I guess, if you want to call that. We fired one while he was on vacation in Europe one year, and it was a fun thing. I think Mr. Foreman was on the council at that time, yeah. And the last thing I want to say on this particular item is, I think we're making a grave mistake by allowing Mr. Casella to retire, to go, whatever we want to call it. He made it point clear that if the air could be cleared, he would love to stay. But he's taking the high road, and I have to respect him for that. That he wants the city to be, move forward and not go backwards. I wish this current council, could see fit to try and keep him, but if that's not possible, I understand that. And the last thing I do say on this matter, again, is I wish that certain members of council during the public meeting at the last meeting had talked to Mr. Foreman and myself. As other than Mr. Destin the elder, Mr. Foreman and myself are the two that have served probably on the council the longest, and the longest with Mr. Casella from when we first hired him back in 2003. So, I can't do anything else except tell you how I feel about the situation and how certain citizens have come to me and told me about the situation. So that's where I'll leave the city manager item. As the other item I have, which is the city credit cards, I'm not going to spend too much time on that, but I do want to delve on this a little bit. In October of last year, it came to light that we as elected officials did not really have a policy or a check and balance system for the use of city credit cards. The fact was discovered by our city manager during the course of his duties, and it was determined that two elected officials and two employees, and including himself, were found that were personal purchases on the city credit card. When the state, and he sent a letter to Ms. Ramswell and to the mayor, and also to, and he also talked to the employees. This matter went before the state's attorney's office, and the state's attorney's office found that there was no criminal intent. And I use that word very, very strongly, criminal intent. No one intended to take the money or anything like that. During the course of the investigation, it was discovered that it was accidental in the cases of the employees, and there was one purchase each, accidental, because they didn't follow up with the question, which credit card do we take? The credit card that's on file. If you take the credit cards on file, then that would have been the city credit card. The same thing happened in a different light with Mayor Ponder and Ms. Ramswell as the two other, as the elected officials. We never had a policy. There was a verbal understanding, apparently, that what you could and could not charge. So that's what was based on. Both, and the city manager also stated that he had one too, that apparently, I guess, his cards look alike. Some credit cards do look alike, and you can't tell the difference in one or the other. The only question that I had was there was a lot of personal charges, some with Mr. Ponder, some with Ms. Ramswell, that should have not been done. Now, she was very gracious in explaining that some of them were the same as the city employees, and I agree with that. Did not check to see which cards were on file. But even though there was no criminal intent, the problem is that we are elected up here to watch the taxpayers' dollars. And in that respect, we weren't doing a good job of watching the taxpayers' dollars by allowing personal use of the credit card. I understand the need to use the monetary needs to use the credit cards for certain things because of the duties that we put on our council members, which is the League of Cities and all the various committees they're on, which they have to travel. But we already have a process that takes care of that. That process is very simple. You submit your receipts to the city clerk. He takes them to the finance director. A motion and a agenda item is made, and during the consent agenda, we reimburse any council member that spends any of their personal money. Or you can, the city clerk's office, using a city credit card, can make any hotel, motel reservations, any syllabuses that are needed, anything that's needed for that purpose. Or another option is that you can also pick up a petty cash check for a certain amount of money that you think you might need. Then you turn the rest of that cash and that receipts back in. So there is a process already in place that's been going on for years that would be much better to serve the public and to keep everything transparent. And I say that because that was one of the things during the past election. The public said we weren't transparent. Now, although it wasn't brought to light, everything that was charged or not charged, and I'm not going to bring that to light tonight, simply because it's not worth that effort. The effort that I intend, that I'm going to make is we created a policy after the fact in February, and at this time, I would prefer to make a motion that we rescind that policy and that we just not have any elected official with a city credit card, and we use the modes of operation that we already have in place for them to be reimbursed. I know this might be a hardship on one or two people, but at the same time, it keeps us transparent. We're not abusing the credit card in any way possible because even though there's no criminal intent, it's out there. It could be done, whether it's accidental or not. And so to keep those accidents from happening with elected officials, I make the motion that we rescind the policy that we adopted in February and that we go to a no city council policy of city credit cards. That's my motion.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? There not being a second, there's no need for discussion.
Okay.
Break? Let's take a 10-minute break maximum. I know it's running late, but
No, it's early.
Thank you. Mr. Foreman? Mr. Dixon?
Yes, thank you. I don't have anything on the agenda tonight. I do want to say a few words and you know, hopefully, we can take it to heed. I realize that we have a lot of, strong positions on the city council here now, and not that we didn't have those before, on city council, but I want us to get at the task at hand. I want us to stop the, going back and forth with council members and basically to look at what we got coming up in the future. And what we have coming up in the future is a lot of work. We've got a city manager to try to get on board. We have comp plan issues that we need to iron out. We have a park that we're having some issues with now, and I think that we need to act as best we can in a unified voice. Not to say that we're going to agree with each other all the time, but my goal for being a city council member is to be able to discuss these issues that we have openly and honestly, and to be able to stand up and shake the patient's hand that I may not have been agreeing with when we get done with the meeting. I'd kind of like to get us there, and we're not there now, but that is my goal. That's what I would want to see. I think what we're doing is basically not constructive. I think that what we're doing is we're basically battling each other back and forth, or we're trying to get in the last word, or that we're trying to one up, or we're trying to do something that is not constructive. I can say that. As for me, I am going to continue to try to act in a positive manner. I'm going to try to debate the issues in what I see as to be fair. And again, I want to make sure that whatever we do, that we can walk out of here at least where we see each other in the grocery store, we don't dodge each other. So thank you for that.
Well said. Councilmember Ramsell?
Thank you. I just wanted to remind everyone, this week is Blessings of the Marketplace and the blessing of the fleet and everything. And I've been so excited to be a part of that ever since I moved here. And I really do encourage everybody to come out and be a part of it. It's amazing. If you've never done it before, find a reason to get off work or participate however you can, because it really is one of those things that really unifies this city and makes us who we are. So really, that's all I have tonight. I too look forward to really getting on to the positive things. The concrete plant has the opportunity to be something amazing, and I really do feel like we're right on the cusp of accomplishing some great things and positive things for this city. So thanks.
I will be at the mayor's meeting the weekend of the blessing, and I appreciate you standing in for the city and representing us. Thank you. Mr. Braden?
Thank you, Mayor. I have three things. Where are we with filling Mr. Galander's position after he left?
What we've done is we've started a recruitment on that, but in anticipation of my transition, I think it would be best to delegate that to the interim city manager. But we do have probably 25 or 30 resumes that have been submitted on that, but I don't think it would be appropriate for me to be making a selection in anticipation of interim. So if you all make some progress tonight on the interim, that would be something that he or she would discuss when they arrive here.
Okay, thank you. I just haven't seen anything on it. Just make sure something was being done or was moving forward with it, so that's great. How about the LDC? Is that pretty much the same answer?
No, the LDC, we actually have a consultant working on and this is two components. There is some of the heavy lifting on the details as relates to which y'all need to get involved in, which I think goes part and parcel to the workshop that's going to be scheduled on June the 9th. Because really, without some clarity in the comprehensive plan, any work you do on the details in the land development code would just be wasted. So, but we do have a consultant that is going through the LDC. Removing any references to the tiering portion that's now been abolished and eliminated, because I don't think in the workshop on the 9th you'll go back to any of that. So That's being worked on as we speak, and hopefully, once that's done, that will then get scheduled to the LPA and then to the city council. And just administratively, housekeeping relating to the tiering component being removed.
And then that'll come back before the council and we can make changes to that? I mean, I know there's a lot more to do with it than other just take the tiering system out of it.
Yeah, I know, but the first step was to remove all of the tiering components, because you have a lot of stuff in the land development code deals with tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. That has to be eliminated and removed. And then the second step is some of the other things that relates to the setbacks, the landscaping plans, all that would be part and parcel to the comprehensive plan discussion you have on June the 9th. So a two-step process, but the first is just administrative, eliminating the tiering conflicts, because the tier is basically gone.
Gotcha. So that's great. Thank you. The third thing I have was our boardwalk. I know we have a lot of protruding nails or nails that are backing out of the boards on the boardwalk, and I know there's one young boy that ripped his foot open, and I believe another person ripped their knee open on nails. What can we do with that? I mean, it looks horrible and dangerous.
Say it again, I didn't hear the
The
first.
nails that are backing out of the boardwalk down on the harbor.
We can look at that first thing tomorrow from a risk standpoint. If you got specific locations, if you get those to us, we'll get them over to the crews for them to address, because from a risk, if we are on notice, then we're going to be responsible for it.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Following council asking me to follow the progress with the Heritage Park project, I began a little study. I don't know how many pages, 200 or 300 pages of legal documents. I avoided involving staff and tried to read the documents over the last 8 years, and the letter of understanding that I delivered to you is primarily for 2 points. One, I wanted a document that I could easily understand, and I hope you can easily understand. And I took all of the legalese out that I thought possible and tried to make it a straightforward, easy read. I believe it pretty well summarizes the events to date, with a possible exception. I was presented with 2 documents today that are not incorporated in this. I have found one change. I met with several of the parties that are primarily interested in this. I met with Mr. Destin today, the BI, and I've done as much due diligence as I can to try to create a document, and I'm hoping that each of you or at a later meeting will tell me if I'm on track or if I'm off track. I want to represent this council when we do some negotiations. But after I wrote this letter, I found that there's a few errors in it, or misinterpretations. Probably the greatest one is, as I read through the document that was presented to us from Mr. Destin, I felt as if we had drawn a line in the sand.
Are you going to number, Mayor? Because you have them numbered here. Are you on a number? I'm sorry.
Yes, you mean the agenda number?
Yeah, or no, actually, the numbers that you numbered on your letter.
No,
Okay.
I'm talking about the letter in
All right,
general.
all right.
I'm not going to try to go into specifics, because I've learned, at least I believe I've learned a couple of things today, and probably the most important is, as I presented this letter, it seems like the arguing positions are pretty much in stone, and I am incorrect. I believe that BI is much more interested in offering flexibility than this document says. I'm going to ask the council's indulgence. I'm not sure exactly how this process should work, but I would like to get with the interested parties over the next 2-3 weeks and try to come up with a solid document that accurately reflects what our needs and positions are before we head to Tallahassee to negotiate. That cannot occur before August, so we have time. We do have to have documents to them at least 30 days out. I would hope to have these finalized nearer to 60 days out. But I'd like to ask the council's indulgence to set my letter aside for the moment and let me try to continue some negotiations in some form with legal counsel to move this off of dead center, or accurately, at least accurately reflect the position, and then I will present it to you to be certain that you agree with what I'm thinking as I head into these negotiations. Obviously, I have my opinion. We have landowners on both sides of this property that have their opinion, and I'm going to wear the hat of the taxpayer, and I'm going to fight to make certain that the taxpayer gets the biggest break out of it. But the other two landowners have their own interests, and it's and they need to, as the representatives or officers of those organizations, they need to represent their position clearly and understandably. And I have no argument that the three of us may not completely agree, but I think there's a possibility of coming closer together on some of these points that I've expressed in this letter before we go to Tallahassee. And I'd prefer to have a better document to present to you to ask for your understanding at that time. I'm absolutely not positive in the legalities of all of these. I will ask our land attorney to take the leadership in this role. I'm going to have to ask the fleet to if they're even willing to do this. I've made some overtures to them as well. Mr. Destin has expressed an interest in representing BNI and moving a little closer together to some of my positions. I'm sure both sides don't necessarily agree with it. I'm frankly a little embarrassed on the fleet's part. I think we've got to put them in a little bit of a worse light than we should have. Some of these positions should have been taken and held firm by the city rather than asking them to do it. But I think there's got to be a way that we can do this, and obviously my interest is to avoid litigation, avoid anyone filing a suit that might stop this, and we actually get a park built that we can all be proud of, and soon, because we're in danger of losing a substantial amount of money if either or both of these grants are lost because we can't come together and reach a decision. And I really believe all the parties involved want to reach an amiable position that the taxpayers can be proud of in the long term. So I'm beating this to death, I know. Mr. Foreman.
I guess it was last December, whenever it was, that this came to a head somewhat after the second attorney in question offered his opinion that the Destin Inc. had no entitlement to the easement. But at that point in time, I made the motion to proceed with building of the park. Mr. Dixon offered an alternative that said we would get another mediation going, and which was done. And that was the third mediation to my knowledge. And so the question was, I'm not sure until this goes to court whether it'll ever be resolved. And what bothers me the most is that the city does in fact have title to that property, and every day when I pass it, it's a parking lot. And it shouldn't be. I mean, the fact of the matter is, there should be nobody parking there while this is ongoing, for any reason, because it was never even contested that it was a parking lot. It was contested that there was an easement. And so, I guess the point I'm raising, Mr. Mayor, is that while you're doing your good work in trying to get this thing resolved, which I hope you do, by the way, I can't see what's prolonging it is allowing that property to be used illegally. And so unless we take up for the taxpayers' interest in this, we're going to lose more than that. We're going to lose millions of dollars simply because we won't take the final step on this, and that's to go to court.
I'm sorry, I've messed up my little monitor here. Mr. Marler, were you next?
Yes. Okay, I'm trying to wrap my head around what you're saying. You're proposing, I'm guessing, to talk to the adjoining property owners on both sides and try to come to some agreement of some sort between all the parties. I wish you luck. It's not working for me. But I can understand that, and you know, I go back to the days of old in this town when everybody could take care of everything with a handshake. Unfortunately, it's gotten past that point, and now, unfortunately, attorneys and our mayor and everybody gets involved. I have, and I guess what you're saying is that your letter is, you want us to just hold off on making a judgment on your letter until you've had time to talk again to both parties. And the only other thing I have is that whether or not you and the parties come to an agreement, when all of this goes to the state, and whatever way the state goes, if the state says no, then I just want to make sure that you know, and nothing against the BI or anything like that, but if the state says no, then the matter is done. That's, I mean, I have to agree with Mr. Foreman on that we need to come to some sort of conclusion one way or the other. And part of that problem is that we don't know what the state's going to say when, or, you know, the land trust is going to say when it's all said and done, whether it is or is not. And I wish you luck again on trying to get both the other parties to work side by side. There's been some issues, and I understand those issues from both sides of the fence, because I'm actually sitting on that fence, and it hurts because I have friends on both sides of that fence. And but I have to agree with Mr. Foreman. We need to do what's right for the city. As far as the parking lot, I don't know. I'm hoping that maybe once we get the crosswalks in, especially the one at the Martyr parking lot, maybe we might be able to work something out and be able to stop people from there. But with the problem I see that is it's not just the restaurant or the other people's property. The city had an obligation when we did the Harbor Boardwalk to come up with adequate parking, and we're failing in that area, but that's another issue. But I can see where that's going. So I wish you luck, Mayor, and I'm okay with that as long as the other two parties are okay with that.
And those of you that have been dealing with this I don't know if anyone's been dealing with it for the full 8 or 9 years, but I know you've got to be frustrated with it. I've been dealing with it for 3 weeks, and
Welcome to politics.
with great reluctance, I walk in and say, "Give me 3 more weeks." But I would like that opportunity, and I'm sorry I jumped in without allowing the audience participation part of this. So if it's permissible with council, I'll jump to the audience for a few minutes and come back to council.
I'm fine with that, and then I'll ask if you need a motion or not, I guess, when this is done.
I don't think I need a motion. I think, Mr. Sherrill, you want to address that?
No motions necessary.
I'm just giving you an opportunity to stop me.
Okay.
Lisa Minshew? That's fine. That's excellent.
Thank you, Mayor. I understand your dilemma. You've been asked to go forward with a task that does not have the kind of detail that you need, and we welcome the opportunity to address any issues that our neighbors have on the public dock that we're trying to provide for the city. We requested to be on the agenda at their last board meeting, and were not able to attend. They declined the offer, and I'm glad that I didn't go, because it sounds like I would have been in a buzzsaw anyway. But I think our real problem is that there's a lot of misinformation about the dock that we're trying to provide. I think we can straighten those out, those questions out with the very meeting you're proposing. I'm hoping that we will be able to get together and address any heartburn they have over the setback or the length or the use of the dock, because I think that we can address each one of those items. But the bottom line is we're trying to provide public access, public docking for the boardwalk. This will probably be the city's last chance to secure that. If we were able to build the dock out as long as we suggested, that would provide 7 slips to the city and to the public to use. At the appraised price of $200,000 a slip, which is what the city used when they appraised the grant purchase, that would be $1.4 million. I don't think you'll get the opportunity to provide that kind of dock with that kind of public access to the public and the people in Destin again. We've already lost a great deal of our beach access over the years. We're going to lose a bunch of our boating access when we finish armoring Noriega Point, because we're going to put stones around the end of that, which means boats can't pull up to it anymore. We're trying to preserve as much as we can, and we look forward to sitting down with the neighbors to see if we can't address whatever issues they have. At that point, I'll leave it alone, Mayor, and we look forward to your meeting, and as soon as possible would be good.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Lisa Minshew on behalf of BI and Mr. Destin. I have to say that I was a little bit surprised when I saw your letter, because I thought that the last meeting that we were at, that the council unanimously voted to approve moving forward to try to have the trust accept the proposal by BI. Yet this letter has a lot of comments in it that would suggest that you're opposed to it. And I thought that you were supposed to be directing this council's recommendation. And then when I reviewed the comments that were prepared at the fleet's annual meeting, I find that statement that was handed out at the meeting and your letter are very similar in language and tone. So I'm very happy to hear that you're going to try to work on that letter again, and we'd be happy to work with you on that. I would also like to suggest that the path that I thought we were heading down, which is Mr. Shirley's draft of March 25th, 2016, that he presented to me, is a draft of what we thought we were doing, which is how the city had approved moving forward with the agreement and how that was going to be presented to the trust. Mr. Shirley prepared that and sent it to me. It had a few blanks in it with just being able to add in the square footages of the different exchanges and how that was going to be a positive presentation. And in Mr. Shirley's presentation, I don't know if you provided that to council yet, but it ends with an affirmative that the proposal does provide benefits to the city and that it does meet all of the standards, in contrast to your letter, which suggests that the plan is questionable and infringes on property rights. So with that in mind, I would like to be able to meet with Mr. Shirley so that we can at least start having communications with the trust on the proper procedure to move forward, to have the trust review this. And if we could have direction from the council to be able to move forward with that so that we can meet with Mr. Shirley and make those phone calls to the trust to get things rolling, we would like to do that. It apparently, if you read through all of what the fleet has said, and I'm sure Mr. Chesser will have his own comments to make, their issue is with those 4 transient slips and the dock. That's the only thing they could possibly be arguing about. So if they don't want the city to have that benefit, then that's something I guess we could take off the table, but we don't want to do that. So we'd like to be able to move forward and go ahead and get the process moving with the state. Thank you.
We obviously would like to get moving with the state as quickly as we can. I would prefer not to involve the state too much at this point until we have some kind of understanding or resolution to some of the discussion points. I have never been in this position. I haven't dealt with the state, but I have it on fairly good authority. They really don't want to get involved in our squabbles. They want us to bring a proposal to them, and I don't want to risk losing the funding. I apologize. The city council has not gotten their new mayor trained very well. I have some ethical problems that, and there's some things I just won't do. And frankly, I believe I'm representing the taxpayers, and yeah, there was a 6-0 vote, but I take exception to some of the items, and I'm not positive that council really meant it that way. When they sent me to negotiate, I think they really felt that there was room to maneuver, and they were sending me out to do it, and I wasn't to take that document and use it as the gospel. Now, I may be told differently in 3 weeks, but by the way, legal counsel will be more than welcome at these meetings, as anyone that can directly move us forward would probably be welcome. I'm not going to open the door to everyone. I doubt this will be public sessions, but we'll have to discuss that later. I'm going to have to spend a little time setting up the structure and getting back with you, and I'm not even certain the fleet wants any part of this at this point. Mr. Chesser, would you like to come speak next?
I'm not getting into this.
Yeah, you're already in it.
Mayor, do you mind if I ask a quick question?
Yes.
Please, for Mr. Destin. The 7 slips that you're referring to, who's going to be paying for the submerged land lease on that?
We would pay a portion of it, and I would suppose the city would. We intend to give an easement or whatever legal instrument has to be put in place in order for the city to take possession of those slips. And the 7 slips that I'm referring to is only if the dock is 200 feet. If we cut it back to 105 or whatever is allowed, then it'll be fewer. But the submerged land lease for that side of the dock, which would be legally conveyed to the city, I suppose that they would pay that side.
So we would do something similar to what the fleet's doing with the 99-year lease?
No, I think leases are 5 years at a time, but our commitment would be longer. We'll have to figure out the legal details of that.
I got you. Okay, that's just something I was thinking about and wanted to get it out there. Thank you.
Mr. Destin mentioned, he said if the dock was extended as part of our discussions, we've offered different lengths and substantially less than the original number that's in the document that I was to negotiate. That is one of the many points that we expressed some flexibility with.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before we begin, I want to observe that Mr. Marler obviously knows several lawyers whom he considers to be crafty, and they graduated with him. For this record, I want it to be known that I did not graduate with Mr. Marler. I, in fact, graduated instead with Mr. Miller. And I promise you, no one has ever accused either one of us of being crafty. A lot of things, but not that. I've sent you all a letter. Now, it was so long, and I apologize for that, but I don't know how to do it any other way.
I wish I could present the letter to everyone. I will say that as a lawyer, I may very well be excused by my client because I've been told that when I come here, my job is to be as forceful as one can be and to be as aggressively embittered as one could be. And I have instead had a bit of a different history. And it is simply that I think the truth told as quietly as it needs to be is a pretty strong statement. I've sent a letter that had some 20 or 30 or 40 pages, and insofar as I know, what I have told you is exactly the truth. And if anybody else, and in just a moment, I'll go through some of that to the extent you all want to hear that. One of the things that Mr. Miller and I do not have in common is that he went to law school at another place. I went to law school where I was in the Army part-time, and I was part-time in law school, doing a daily in law school, but I worked at night. Not that it matters to you all, but about 12 o'clock at night, I'd go to work in a place in Gainesville, and at 8 o'clock in the morning, I'd get done, and I'd go right into class. That worked out for me until the very last test I took at Gainesville. When, in sitting somewhere in that room taking an exam, I looked over and I found that there were two guys who were in the same law school, the same class, and taking the same test, who were passing test papers back and forth between them. And I look over and I see, I'm not the only one who sees that that's going on, that several people have got onto the fact that there's something really unusual. Now, I should know that now that I'm a lawyer, that's not all that unusual. But I thought it was, as an idealistic young lawyer. I learned that later the administration had become aware somehow that this had been going on, and that they talked to those people who had seen it and said, now what do you think we ought to do here? And I had to say, I'll be glad to tell you some of the ideas I might have about what you ought to do. But you're the administration. It isn't me. I really don't want to get involved in their squabble. I really don't want it to become personal. Not with me. You got a thing to do, and I prefer that you do it. In the letter that I sent to you all, I said a number of things about history, and I will say here that if anyone finds fault with any fact stated in that letter, I would be happy to hear it, because I will address it. What I told you there was that every fisherman in the Destin fishing fleet, and there are many, there were 59 shareholders when we met on that first day to build the fleet. Every one of them stepped up, and he knew he was going to have to mortgage his home. He knew he would put the second or third mortgage on his boat, and he knew he would go to mom or dad or brother or somebody and borrow money to get his share of the down payment so they could buy that property. And maybe as important, for every parking space on the Destin Fishing Fleet property that the city required them to put on that property, somebody mortgaged something. They were all expensive, and the fleet did that, and they had plenty of parking for the activities that go on that piece of property. Now, fast forward to where we are, and I can tell you we really, really don't want to get involved in somebody else's conflict. We can tell you we've sent this letter that said there were some important things to us when you all bought the property next door. One of them was that you build the park, because it can only add to the benefit of the property that the Destin fleet already owns. Another was, and I told you this the last time I was here, I apologize for doing it, but it is one of those mundane facts of life that is important. We added to that contract that you build the restrooms on that property that we thought you needed to build, because when you don't, then the pressure it puts on your neighbors is really quite considerable. Throughout that part of Destin, we have said in our presentation to you that we want you to vow that you not take one step that puts us in a worse position than we're already in with the question of parking. That we would like you to do. I've said in that letter we have no intention of being either embittered or personal or insulting to anyone, and I never, ever want that to happen. I really don't even want to get involved in a dispute between the owner on one side, who says, I've got the right to use things that you all have to adjudge, and the owner where we are, who says only people need to provide their own parking. It's not at all fair to say to a guy that really ain't got a heck of a lot of money, you go borrow money from mom to put a parking place on this piece of property, but to the rest of the world, they don't have to do that because the city spent $4.5 million and they've let you do it. I've said in my letter that the last thing we want to do is get into litigation. Don't want to do that. I really, really don't. And I've told that to my client. It's the last way to solve a problem. But it is patently illegal for a city to provide city financing to benefit a private property owner. And in this situation, that's exactly what's happened. The bottom line of my letter is, guys, please don't make us get so much in the middle of this dispute, because it's not just the parking at the end of a pier, and it's not just the pier. The pier is a problem. But we kind of think that there comes a point where city dollars need to be a concern, and not necessarily to my folks, because they're going to go on as long as we've heard that lots of those folks come wandering to the east to park on Destin Fleet property because they've got extra parking spaces part of the time. They want you to come to grips with this whole parking issue. We will help you. If there's a way we can address the problem by either modifying your plans, by somehow stepping up to the parking issue downtown, we will do what we can to help you. We've offered that space for the landing spot for a walkover if that can be done. To the contrary, I was really quite surprised when we were last here to hear that the fishing fleet had been bad city residents, had been bad city partners, because we think we have been very good city partners every time we were asked to take a step back and do something that seemed to involve the city and the city's rights. Those things we've done, and we tender to you, the letter that I sent you is factual. It tells you about the development of the fleet. It's not Kelly and Marianne Wines. It's not anybody special. It is a whole bunch of folks who are special. Some of those people are here. I may not be here next time we meet because I have tried not to be insulting, and maybe I ought to try harder. But I do want to tell you that the buck stops at this desk, and we want you to require parking. We want you to build a park. We want you to do what we think we have a contract that requires you to do, and what the state of Florida law likewise requires you to do. All of you have personally been very courteous. Certainly Mr. Miller has, Scott Shirley has. All of you have been upfront with us, and we appreciate that. Now, this council, I'm sorry, I have to put it back to you and say this is where it's at. We want you all to build the park, and we don't want to be the ones who say, you all need to be looking closer at your own rules, and you all need not to be taken as a patsy. I understand in the case of the two guys that I saw passing examinations in the back row at the University of Florida, that they wanted to talk about it, and they wanted other things to take place, and they had really postponed the conversation as long as they could. I don't particularly want to get into it, but I can tell you what I saw. And it's somebody else's job to decide what to do about that. Are there questions of my letter? Is anybody, I hope you all have seen it. I'll make it as available as I can for all of you. If there are questions about any fact in that letter, I'm promise you I'll stay here as long as it takes.
Ray, my screen is locked up on the time limit as these. Can you reset that?
Do I have that result on the screen?
I apologize. The screen lights up and tells me which council member would like to have the floor first or second. I can't use it at the moment. Is there questions from council?
I have a question, Mayor. On page 4, the top, the second sentence, it says, today's patrons of Dewey Destin's Harborside Restaurant property park 2 to 3 cars deep in the city park property, and the city has not begun to build the park. Did you do any type of study or anything to come up with those numbers?
I apologize to you. You spoke very quickly, and I was looking for my letter, and I didn't hear the part that, would you slow down just a
I
bit?
was just referring to the part where it says that there's patrons from Mr. Destin's restaurant parked 2 to 3 cars deep on the city park property.
Thank you. Oh, yes, yeah.
How did you come to those numbers? Was there a study done or something on that?
Yes, it being done, but I stumbled across the parking lot several times personally, and those cars were parked 3 deep, and the people seemed to be wandering in that direction. And I didn't stand, I would not have been invited to stand there and ticket the ones who went in to see just where they were going. That's where they went toward, and came out picking their teeth. So I mean, they were somewhere in that vicinity.
Right. I got you. Thank you. That's all I have, Mayor.
Questions, fellas, ladies?
Thank you.
Thank you for letting me have an opportunity.
I believe it's Carrie Harbinger.
Hello, I'm Carrie Harbarger, 413 Spring Lane. And I wanted to say that actually there's more than just 2 parties at stake here. In between those properties is city property, belongs to me, belongs to you, belongs to all of us. Through the years I've watched this city has liquidated our opportunities to have things such as a city marina. We'll never see those days again. Fishing piers long gone. Billfish tournaments, I don't think there's been one in Destin since 1995. Pretty sad. One thing I can say that could really do some justice for the citizens and the people of Destin that we want is transient boat slips. If somebody's willing to offer us transient boat slips, we want them, we need them. We've been liquidated of everything that we've ever been allowed to. I feel like I might not be, I'm special, Mr. Chester. We're all special, and we've all invested. I might not be a harborfront property owner, but I'm invested. I own homes here, I own a business here. I'd like to see those transient boat slips. We deserve them. We deserve access to the waterways, and as Councilman Marler knows, I'm up here constantly fighting for access to the waterways. That's my goal. Billfish tournaments, those transient boat slips mean everything to us. I'd like nothing more than to get into my boat and come around, visit the harbor walk, be able to get out and have a place that I'm not impeding on somebody's private property. We have an opportunity to have transient boat slips. We should take them. We need them. Here's another point. My husband just retired from the Army. 21 years, 6 months, 10 days, 3 combat tours. I understand there's been an offer of putting in, and I've seen actually, had a girlfriend that worked on this, had seen where there was an offer of wheelchair lifts off boats. What a wonderful gesture to the military. We do the Wounded Warriors here. I actually volunteered my time for the Chris Kyle Foundation and actually got a response from his wife thanking me for offering the ice cream and she let me know she'll be back. And it's not just the military or the Wounded Warriors that deserve those lifts. If we can negotiate, first of all, let me just say that I love our Harbor Walk. We are not as ADA compliant as we really could be. What a wonderful gesture to have wheelchair lifts. Those have been offered. That's something that should really be taken into consideration. And not just for that, for all handicapped. We had Miss Kate Koberman sat up here, and she can't be with us now, but her and I had this in-depth conversation. She has no access to the harbor. She's in a wheelchair. She has been her whole life. So I think that the citizens, if this can be worked out and we can obtain 5, 6, 8 more transient boat slips, we deserve that. I would like access to the waterways. And as long as I can breathe and I can get up here and be a pain in your butts, and Councilman Marler knows, am I not constantly up here asking for access to the waterway? I won the little debate over the measly $30 because I want us to be able to access our waterways. And if we can get transient boat slips, by God, there's more than 2 people here. There's 12,000 of us that are involved in this situation. That strip of property in the middle belongs to me and you and everybody. And if we can put transient boat slips, and I can take my family that's in town in Chicago today, buy a boat around there, not worry about impeding on somebody's private property, and know that we own those, it might be first come, first served. By God, let's do it. Give us some boat slips. We have 2. We need more. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Mr. Dixon?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I know you have the authority to call workshops. I got to tell you, I kind of suggest that we might do a workshop on this issue whenever we do get, you get a determination or make up your letter or whatever it is that you want to do, that we sit down in a workshop format and try to bounce these things around and try to come up with what you're going to go to Tallahassee with. So my suggestion would be a workshop in the future on this issue.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Mr. Morgan?
Thank you, Mayor. For me, this is personal. It's an uncomfortable situation because I know both sides of this issue very well, but because of the position I'm in, I can't remain neutral on it. With your letter, Mayor, I did have some issues with it, and with the general tone. Back in 2010, when we purchased the property, and I guess this is a question for city staff, the 3 boat slips, we eliminated 15 parking spots. We retained 3 boat slips, one's for the fireboat, 2 are transient. What prevented us from turning the other 3 that we gave to the fleet into transient? To keep all 6 as transient for the city? Was that not a possibility?
It was, we discussed that back then. The intent of the Fleet Marina was to have slips for the charter fishing boats. So they were not excited about converting all 6 to transient because they wanted those to be charter boats.
I think my issue with that is the city and the taxpayer paid for the property, $4.6 million for it. So why we want to retain the 3 slips? Did we receive any compensation for the 3 slips that returned to the fleet?
No.
And then in number 2, on your letter of understanding, the city gave up curb cuts on 98, entrance to the park to BI Inc. City was not compensated and the park property was devalued. The park property was devalued when we have no riparian rights to the waterfront property we paid for. Waterfront access is important. Water view, harbor view is great, but I'm not going to pay full value for waterfront property if I don't retain the access to the water. And I would like to think that the people who appraised the property, and I know we paid over the appraisal amount for it, if you factor that in, it does devalue the property. And for us, this is an opportunity for us to have a public dock. On the dock that Mr. Destin's willing to build on the eastern side of it. It's something that most waterfront cities have. We don't have any municipal dockage on the harbor. And I think it would be a great asset to the city. So when you mention in your letter that that we're not receiving compensation, that we're giving up these concessions, in my opinion, the 2,000 square feet of access road or of the easement that Mr. Destin claims he has on the property that's been there for 50 years, the road, I believe that the municipal dockage increases the value of our property far more than conceding the easement to Mr. Destin. You know, it would, in a way, reclaim some of the access to the waterfront property that we paid for. And we gave up the 3 slips to the fishing fleet without compensation. And an appraisal is $600,000 worth of slips. And we gave those up without concessions, but we're going to shut down a road that's been in operation for 50 years to our western neighbor. I wholeheartedly disagree with that, especially when he's offering the municipal dockage, which I think would greatly benefit the city and the park in general and the value of the property. And I understand that it would cost money to redesign the park. And you said at a loss of the city to $65,000 to $85,000. I personally don't like the design of the park in the first place. I don't like the idea of shaving the bluff. And so for us to spend that money to incorporate the road into the park, I think it's money well spent because we will be getting municipal dock slips out of the deal. Thanks.
Mr. Morgan, I'm afraid you've caught me. That letter was meant to be a little provocative in hopes that I would get feedback. Ms. Ramsell.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Chesser, would you mind, I actually did have a couple questions about your letter. I just needed to pull my thoughts together.
Please, come back up. I think it'll be easier.
I might suggest, before I start, that the fleet did give up 15 parking spaces for those 3 boat slips, which at that point were very valuable.
But transient slips don't require
Go ahead,
parking
please.
spaces.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Did you want to, Mr. Morgan, did you want to?
My whole issue with giving up parking spaces was that transient slips don't require parking spaces.
Sure,
by
they
our
are
city.
very valuable parking spaces located right by the water. And you're right, they did walk away from those slips, which was giving consideration for the 3 boat slips that, they walked away from those parking places. They were very valuable.
Sure, but my argument would be that by transferring all 6 into transient slips, it would require no parking, as a transient slip doesn't require parking spaces.
Sure, but they had already owned those 15 parking spaces, which they gave to the city. They walked away from those. That is a consideration. Yes, please.
Thanks. In reviewing your letter, I noticed on page 6, do you have it in front of you? Or
I do.
Okay. On page 6, you noted that the city of Destin must fulfill the written promises to the Destin fishing fleet, which the fleet relied upon when it gave up the right of first refusal and amended the 99-year submerged land lease agreement to benefit the city. My first question is, how does the city entering into a lease benefit the city? Like, what benefits did we gain from this?
You own the property.
Correct.
You sought in that amendment the right to own the property and build a park. You got the right to build the park that you did not previously have. You got title to the park that you did not previously have. You got those benefits.
But that was through our purchase of the property, not through a lease agreement with the fleet.
Which had already been done before you ever purchased it. You purchased the property subject to the rights that the fleet had and still has in that property.
Right, I understand what you're saying, but with the lease in place, and specifically when the lease was renegotiated, or actually I shouldn't say renegotiated, when it was done as an amendment in 2010,
Right.
what was the benefit gained to the city at that time?
The benefit was that the city got to own the property so that they could build their park. They did not have those rights before that. We didn't set the price that the city agreed to pay. Had I done that, I might very well have said, are you sure you want to do this? They did want to do it. And the only way they could do that was by an amendment to that lease. They couldn't park on the property because the state grant would not permit them to do it. The parking that we owned, those 15 parking spaces, had to be removed, and they were.
So, but we had the right to build before the amendment was filed in 2010, correct?
The right to build, and you still have the right to build. You
So
own
how
the
would that
property.
be a benefit if we already had that?
What you didn't have was those 15 parking spaces and all of the riparian rights attendant to that property. You didn't have that, and
Well,
still don't.
Okay, I guess my point is that with the 2010 passage of the lease amendment, we're giving things away. And apparently this is, a lot of people think that this is me trying to take things away from the fishermen, and this absolutely is not the case. I support the fishermen 1,000%, and I know this council does too. What I'm trying to get at is making sure that the public is getting their piece of this pie that they deserve, and which is the whole reason that we bought
And
the park.
what right did the public buy that they do not have? The right to occupy that property as a park.
Absolutely.
The whole purpose of my letter
Sure.
was to say, you've paid a lot of money, and now you're sitting here, as somebody has already said, passing a parking lot daily.
So it sounds like you're framing this as a parking issue.
That's what the city's park is being used for.
Okay, so do people, how do you know that they're all from, like Mr. Braden mentioned earlier, you saw some folks going over there. Well, how can you say that they weren't people going to visit the fleet or the restaurant?
Every one of us who has a predisposition to believe that they are going down the road somewhere will believe that. It is the nearest open parking space to that restaurant, which doesn't have enough parking and which does violate most of the parking codes. So where are those people going likely? And as I said, when they go that direction to get in and they come out picking their teeth and get back in the car, I can't tell you where they went. They could have gone to the bathroom, but I hope
Well,
not.
I would view that as supposition. I mean, it's not fact. And I mean,
Certainly.
it does remain, we've got the Marlar parking lot, across and over a little bit
Sure you
for
do.
anybody to use.
Sure you do.
Right?
Yes.
In that same sentence, you're discussing the 99-year submerged land lease.
Yes.
Okay, now, the submerged land lease is only a 5-year contract.
It's a renewable contract. That's the way the
Every-
state issues their submerged land leases.
5
Yes.
years, correct? Not 99.
Renewable thereafter. Yes, exactly. You don't have a 99-year lease on Holiday Isle, except that it is renewable for an additional 99-year lease. You're right, it's not 100.
Mayor, can I bring up a point of order? Yes. Where we're going here is, we're trying to negotiate this when we've asked you to do it. And I think we just need to stop it here and let you do what you asked us to do, and go from there.
Mr. Marlar, I let you speak for 20 minutes with multiple errors in fact.
That, we're
Please
not
let me
discussing that
speak as
issue. We're
well.
discussing an
Oh,
issue that the
hold on,
mayor,
hold on,
the
hold on.
mayor wants to take care of. It has
Let's-
nothing to
And
do with
I'd
that.
like to
Okay.
speak.
Let's,
So,
Ms. Ramsell, let's try to wrap it up pretty quick, can we?
I will continue. So, on page number 5, there's a reference to, Mr. Destin, I believe, saying that he will provide 1 parking space and 1 handicap parking space. Is that in the plan, or is that a negotiated?
I'm sure there are discussions going on. My understanding was that that was one of the offers made, and I think the last one. Whether that's kind of a moving target, I think. You know, like the 2 guys that I told you that I saw in the back of the room at the University of Florida, they wanted to talk a long time about how they got caught doing that. And my point was, you know, a lot of that I don't care about. I know that you were doing it. The same thing is true here. I don't know what offers are being made, or what the most recent offer is, or what it will be in the future. That's what I heard at the time the letter was written.
The reason I bring that up is I remember when the plans were put up, the conceptual drawings of the park, and when you looked at that, there was actually 1 space and 1 handicap space actually on the east side of the property.
Right.
By, sort of between the city park and the Fleets property.
Right.
Why would we need 2 separate one of those? Doesn't that accommodate the requirement?
I'm not sure, 2 separate, one of what?
Well, in the conceptual plan, there's already 1 handicap space and 1 regular parking space drawn in.
Right.
And then now it's saying that Mr. Destin needs to provide 1 parking space and 1 handicap space. Is that a separate issue, or is that for the park?
You've lost me. The suggestion is they need 2 spaces?
I don't know, I'm asking for clarification because
and
I'm not sure what the intent
Yeah, I
was.
wasn't sure how they get there anyway. I
Okay.
mean, they may need to get airlifted into that spot if they're gonna be there.
Sure.
But
Okay, that's all I have about the document. I did have a question for the mayor. We keep talking, and a lot of words have been said about
I'm sorry,
negotiating.
let's hold that. We need a 5-minute break if I can take it, if you don't mind.
This is just my last sentence.
Okay, go ahead.
There's a lot of talk tonight about how we need to go forward and negotiate. I thought that the motion we'd made was a selection of a plan, and that we were directing to go forward to present our selection of the plan with staff to Tallahassee.
That's probably accurate, but the person you selected to negotiate does not feel comfortable with it, and I probably decline that offer if we're not going to have some flexibility.
Okay, I just wanted to understand, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to take a 5-minute break and start again at 5 till.